Heyo everybody, Zack here with RevZilla. Welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about new motorcycles as we ride. Very exciting day today. We're going to ride to the new RevZilla West offices. We're going to update a slightly revised leaderboard, but first we got to get there. And to do it, we're riding our special guest. That is Triumph's Street Triple R, not to be confused with the RS. That is a 765cc inline triple, a sporty chassis, all for a little bit less than 11,000 US dollars. It's famously good as an all-round motorcycle, the Street Triple. So today we find out how it takes on the daily ride. Okie dokie, we're back, everybody, with the Street Triple R, and we can analyze some of what we can see from the curbside and blocking the light on these lovely Brembo calipers. Steel braided lines, that's sort of a Triumph trademark, thank goodness. Brakes are usually quite good, and this bike is no exception. A headlight that's very polarizing. People think that it's kind of ugly or kind of awesome. That seems to be the general consensus, one or the other. Let's see, what else? So 765cc engine, of course evolved from the 675. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Yeah, other than that, pretty basic bike. It's a twin spar frame, 2 wheels, stonking engine, no real body work, good components, and yeah, like I said, famously good motorcycle. People have loved this bike for many years now. So let's fire it up. Oh, we got to pull in the clutch on a Triumph. And there's that grumble. I did a little bit of research on the clutch pull, by the way, because I had someone ask on social media, why do you have to pull in the clutch? Just a safety thing, as it turns out. Nothing super exciting. I'm kind of surprised. Like, you can, if it was going to be a safety thing, why wouldn't Honda do it and not Triumph so much? Anyway, whatever. Let's hit the road. Rocking my wax cotton jacket. It was so cold earlier. Cold and foggy. And I thought, perfect day for a Triumph, you know? The weather was tipping its cap to jolly old England. I thought I'll wear my wax cotton jacket, that'll be appropriate. And now the sun's out. I'm not asking you to feel bad for me, I'm just saying. I misjudged the gear thing a little bit. That'll happen. Enough about what you're wearing, Zach. Tell me about the bike. You got your 765cc inline triple, like I said. On the Daily Rider scales, 416 pounds with a full 4.6 gallons of gas, which is a decent sized gas tank, and reasonably light, actually, you know, just over 400 pounds for a yeah, for a bike that holds almost 5 gallons. Pretty good. The seat height is 32.5 inches, I believe. It reads kind of tall on paper. It's definitely a full-size seat height. The bike is quite narrow in the middle, though. The standover height is really not bad. I can put my both feet flat on the ground. I am 6'2", but still, it is a pretty reasonable bike to swing a leg over, actually. And interestingly, there is a low version, Street Triple R Low, or LRH, low ride height, maybe, I forget. At any rate, that bike's seat is 1.77 inches, I believe, lower than this one. So that'll make a big difference if you really want this bike, but you have shorter legs. Kind of cool that Triumph does that. But for average size folks, I think you'll find the standover height not too bad. I can tell you 116 claimed horsepowers from this bike. And 57 foot-pounds of torque, so pretty good torque numbers for a mid-size multi-cylinder bike. And yeah, 116 is a nice power number. I think that's sort of where the most fun lies, in my opinion, is somewhere between 100 and 120. I think that's a real sweet spot. Interestingly, back to the weight real quick. Triumph's claimed weight is 370 pounds. You might note that on the website. That is dry, so no oil, no fuel, no, I don't know. Sometimes they go pretty crazy, manufacturers, with the whole dry weight, no battery, stuff like that. But yeah, the actual measured weight, 416 pounds, as I said, on the DR scales. And yeah, for this R model, $10,800. which is a couple grand cheaper than the RS version. With the RS, you get the TFT dash, and you get bar end mirrors, I believe. You also get Olin suspension instead of the Showa stuff, although this stuff is adjustable as well, which is pretty keen. And anyway, I'll let you compare spec sheets. This is the basics of how it differs from the RS. And like I said, you do save a couple $1,000, which is pretty cool. Aside from the somewhat tall on paper but not too bad in real life seat height, I would say the big thing that I noticed about the Street Triple when I swing a leg over it is the height of the pegs. Pretty high. So this bike grew from the Daytona 675 sport bike platform, which means it handles pretty well, which we'll talk about later. But it also means it's in general always been kind of aggressive from a naked bike standpoint. So the pegs do feel a little bit high, especially compared to something like an MT-09 or something like that, which has much lower pegs. But in general, upper body position is quite reasonable. Bar is pretty open and flat, and I don't have a lot of pressure on my hands as I ride down the road, which is nice. And because we're on the highway, it's a good time to talk about how the bike is as far as comfort on the slab, as they say. And this bike's not bad. There is no wind protection, really, at all. Some bikes, it kind of feels like you sit down in the bike, kind of sunken into it, like Honda Africa Twin's a perfect example of that. Other bikes, you feel like you sit up on top of them, and this is definitely the latter. You feel like the height of the top of the gas tank is pretty low. You feel like you're sitting kind of perched up on top of the bike, and that means you get every bit of wind that's coming at you right in the chest and the stomach. And there's nowhere to hide from that, really. Luckily, in typical naked bike fashion, you can slide back and forth on the seat a little bit, so you can scoot your butt back and lean into the wind a little bit, which helps. And at like 70 miles an hour or something like that, as we're going right now, it's pretty reasonable. It's not too uncomfortable. I think when you get the revs up above 6,000 RPM, so I'm just gonna put it in 5th gear, and we're gonna go 75. And now the revs are 6,500 RPM, something like that, and the mirrors go all blurry. And you get quite a bit more vibration in the foot pegs and in the handlebar. So yeah, 6,000 RPM and below is like definitely a lot more reasonable from a comfort standpoint. One other thing about freeway comfort that I really appreciate is the seat, which is actually quite good. This is not the type of bike that you usually get a comfortable seat on, but props to Triumph. I like this surface material because it's not too slippery or too sticky or too textured or anything weird. It's just very simple, and also just the foam, the padding is quite good. I mean, it's comfortable for an all-day ride for me anyway, which I was not expecting when this bike came into the shop. Certainly from looking at it and knowing its history, it doesn't seem like it would be, but actually quite a good saddle. And on the topic of sitting on this bike all day, it's got pretty good range too. I've been getting about 40 miles to the gallon, and I will say my riding has been somewhat spirited in certain circumstances. A friend of mine's got one of these, and she's done a bunch of touring on it. She does have soft luggage on there with some mounts, but she said it was a little bit of a headache and there weren't a ton of options. So something to keep in mind. If you really want a sport touring bike, this probably isn't at the top of your list, but it is doable. It does have decent range, and like I said, not a bad seat. This section of road is kind of bumpy. The mirrors get a little buzzy if you try and cruise above 6,000 RPM, so if you want to go, 80 or 85 or something like that in top gear, the mirrors will get pretty blurry. In general, they're not bad though. The placement's okay. It's sort of like 30% elbow is what I see. So they're not great, but they're okay. Mostly I'm a little sad that this bike doesn't have the bar end mirrors that you get on the high-end Triumphs, Speed Triple or the Street Triple RS. Those bar end mirrors are really nice, I think. They look nice, and I actually think they work really, really well. But again, you gotta save some stuff for the up-spec model. I gets it. A little traction control kicking in there, keeping the front wheel on the ground, probably for the best as we're entering the neighborhood. Should ride politely. And time for the stop sign test. We'll see if we can clean these stop signs without putting feet down. Oh yeah. Whew. Nice easy one. And that sort of makes sense because the Street Triple is kind of known for being really well balanced and connected to the road. and I definitely find that to be true even at around town speeds. It feels direct and plugged in, which is nice. An ambulance here for a wounded Christmas tree. Oop. Of course, the other thing we like to evaluate in this section of the ride is throttle response, clutch feel, brake feel, that kind of thing. I often talk about how Triumphs are the gold standard for throttle response and fueling, and riding this bike around has made me believe that more than ever. It's just quite good. It's got that little bit of herky-jerky on-off thing that a lot of modern bikes do, but in general it's just really linear and easy to use, and it's a simple cable operated clutch, but works really nicely. The lever's adjustable on both sides for the brake and the clutch. It's good, premium stuff. Okay, final stop sign. We get to 0 miles an hour. We got it. Are we gonna make this light? Oh, no, we're not gonna make light. We're not gonna make light. No. Okay, that's fair. That's fine. That's okay. That's okay. We'll talk about the dash Who's-It. The RS model gets a juicy TFT and different switchgear here as well. You get a joystick and some nifty other features. This is much more rudimentary, much more 5 or 8 years ago, I would say. Sweet, Jigsaw bro. You get your 2-color LCD and then an analog tack here, which, I don't know, nothing quite like a tack needle swinging up like that, right? It's got a good look about it. I think in general this is quite a good setup for a dash with the analog tack and the digital speedo and the rest of the menu over here. It's pretty good. Okay, well, we didn't finish talking about the dash, and I think the light's going to go green. But you accessed some of the menus. Yep, there we go. We're gonna have to pick that up later if we have time. Sorry about that. Life is good for Corvette guy, as it always is. Yeah, one other thing I like about this bike that I'm reminded just trundling through this neighborhood here is I like the way that it sounds. And I know that's a subjective thing. Talk about that a fair amount here on Daily Rider, about how you either like the sound of bikes or you don't. But I like the way this one sounds in general. I also appreciate that it's got a nice howl when you spin it up, but it's not real loud or obnoxious or clattery. Some bikes, I feel like they don't have the right balance of sound between when you rev them up and you want to make some noise and when you just want to trundle through a neighborhood and be polite. And I like the balance of Triumph triples. I think they're good. They got that nice little whistle from straight cut primary gears, I believe. And yeah, it's just it's a pleasant noise to listen to, high RPM or low RPM. In general, passenger accommodations are not bad. I'm told actually good marks for the seat from my lady friend. Said it was padded nicely and actually surprisingly comfortable, but legroom not great, as you might expect. You're probably not going to want to ride very far, but for short rides they might be impressed at how soft the seat is. Twisty road's not going so well this time around, kids. We got 2 family SUVs in front of us. Unfortunately, doesn't look good for setting the lap record on the Daily Rider twisty descent here. What I can tell you though is that I did ride this bike on some actual twisty roads without family SUVs in front of me, where I could actually cruise through some corners and lean on the tires a little bit. And when you do that, you will find this machine to be very, very satisfying to use. It feels light and agile, but at the same time really linear and not twitchy at all. It feels like a bike that was designed pretty well a long time ago and has evolved to be as close to perfect, I think, as any other middleweight naked bike certainly is as far as handling goes. I did get a question on social media somewhere about, do I need to spend the extra couple $1,000 to get the RS if I want to do the occasional track day? The short answer would be no. I think a couple $1,000 buys a lot of tires and track days, and this bike is really, really good. You don't get the sexy TFT dash, you don't get the super high spec brakes, and you don't get the high-end suspension, but like this bike feels great. And I think especially for a beginner intermediate level track day rider, I don't think you're gonna miss much, which says a lot about this bike, even though it's the, you know, the lower end version. Got a little power wheelie there, even with TC on. We'll have to turn TC off at some point, just to, you know, in case we need to do a scientific experiment of some kind. I should say, I got distracted talking about the dash there, but the mode button here does allow you to switch through rider modes on the fly. You can do road, sport, or rain on the fly. I cannot switch it into rider mode, which is the 4th mode, while I'm moving, because rider mode has traction control turned off. It's a pretty typical Triumph setup for ride modes, though. It has, like I said, the 3 basic ones and then a rider customizable one where you can go in and change the parameters for the throttle map, the traction control setting, and that kind of thing, which will allow you to flip it into that mode without having to dive into the menus, which is especially handy on this bike because diving into the menus is kind of a pain in the tail. You got to use these 2 buttons on the side of the dash, and it doesn't have like a real slick interface like some of the new TFT equipped machines do. Another thing I appreciate about these ride modes is that the throttle map is actually discernibly different. In rain mode, you can feel it's much more muted and calm. In sport, you get a lot more action in the first part of the rotation of the throttle. I don't actually find myself wanting to use those modes. I think road mode is just calibrated really, really nicely. But I do appreciate that the modes are at least different, because my least favorite thing about ride modes, or any kind of mode on a bike, is when you change the mode and you can't tell that you've done anything. And I don't know, especially when it comes to throttle response or something like that, like I just don't see the point. Like, why have it on there if it's just this sort of like really finite thing? If you looked at the software, you'd be like, oh, it's 11% different at this engine speed. Like, who cares, man? I want to feel like I'm actually changing the bike's character, and to Triumph's credit, that's how it works on this bike. And off we go. What a great engine. I did get another question on social media asking about the 675 engine versus the 765 engine between the 2 street triples, and basically, you know, asking, is there a reason to get the 675 model over the 765, the new version, or is the new motor just better? And I asked around a little bit to a couple people that know their Triumphs and know their motorcycles, and none of us could really come up with a particularly good answer for why you would want a 675 engine. The closest I got was a stunt rider friend of mine who said that he prefers the cable operated. He doesn't like ride-by-wire, and so yeah, the older, simpler bikes to him were more appealing because of the cable actuated throttle bodies and that kind of thing. But that's all we could come up with, really. In general, the 765 engine is just, it's really good. It's just a kind of a better version of the 675 motor, in my opinion. I don't think it's more intimidating in a way that's worse, and still all the same attributes, really. You might be noticing I haven't been shifting with the clutch. Just got a quick shifter up and down on the Street Triple R, which is, yeah, again, more pretty good tech, even though it's not the highfalutin model. Pretty good. All right, yellow light. We can talk about brakes. I'm gonna stab them pretty hard here. Oof. Real good brakes. Really, really quite good. Flip down into rider mode here. Still blinking at me. Now both of them are blinking at me. Are we in? I think I'm in rider mode. I'm not sure why it's blinking. But anyway. This little Wheelie. If you're an expert rider and you want to ride quickly but safely on a twisty mountain road, or especially on a track, you're going to want to shut traction control off. It's not a performance system that's going to help you go faster around a track. It's a safety system that's going to keep the bike from doing anything really wild while you're riding. So I do enjoy having the traction control system off, but and I appreciate that it's an option, absolutely. But yeah, I do leave it on when I'm just riding around town, because it's the kind of thing that can save your hide. The brakes are darn good on this bike. Like I said, real good equipment, good hardware down there. And I was able, when I did a bunch of panic stops and sort of like simulated some track riding in one of my test rides, I was able to get them to fade a little bit. But in general, you're going to be hard pressed to really find the limit and be disappointed with these brakes, in my opinion. Okie doke, last stop sign before our dirt section. I'm sure there are lots of people out there very excited to see how the Street Triple R does in the dirt. Well, you are in luck. Here we go, everybody. We did have some rain recently, so I'm curious to see what this looks like. Oh yeah, look at that, some puddles. See how we go here. We're gonna probably stay away from the puddles in general. Oh yeah, suspension's pretty, feels pretty stiff, this kind of thing. And I got TC off so we can do a little, woo, Jesus, that happened fast. Sideways quicker than I was expecting. Oh, where's our jump? We gotta find it. We gotta make our way to the jump, everybody. Here we go. There it is. I see the run up. Oh, ouch. That was not super pleasant, actually. Ooh. I bottomed the fork. Sorry, Triumph. Didn't mean nothing by it. Anyway, now we see if it can wheelie. Yo, yeah. I mean, just a great wheelie bike. MTW Incorporated, they know. Good wheelie bike, right? Excellent bike. Maybe not so much for jumps, as we found out. My shoulder hurts a little bit. I know it's the wide angle, you know, it probably doesn't look like a very big jump, but I'm telling you guys, I'm probably like, I was gonna make a joke about being like 3 feet in the air, but yeah, it's not a very big jump, but also this bike not made for jumping. Interestingly, the 765 Moto 2, when I landed off that jump, I probably didn't hit the jump quite as hard on that 765 Moto 2, but that Olin suspension on that Moto 2, man, whew, I couldn't believe it landed like a rally car, just bam, stuck. This thing, we blew through the stroke a little bit. Maybe I should have, you know, dialed in some compression damping or something. Anyway. So the big thing with Triumph triples, I think, I did mention the MT-09 recently here, and it's that it is the sort of the original, like, not the original triple literally, but in a modern sense, you know, Triumph has held on to this triple thing, and I do think that there's something to be said for being the torchbearer of a certain engine type, and Triumph has certainly done that with the triple, and one of the reasons that they are the standard bearer is that the bikes are engineered really well. They sound terrific, it's unique, and it's just really fun to use. Okay, here's where we deviate from the old route, everybody. Turn off of this big road here. Instead of going up to the freeway and going back to my neighborhood, we're gonna go over this way to the RevZilla West office. Maybe one more little wheelie. And then we turn left into our office complex here. We see if we can back it in. Yeah, sort of. Not really. Wasn't super happy about that. Can't really do it through ABS anyway. And one suggestion I got was a U-turn test from a fan of the show, and yeah, I decided that's a kind of a fun idea. So I'm going to start right on this line here. We're going to go like this, and I'm going to go full lock. We're going to do a U-turn. We're going to see how quickly we can turn. Yeah, so, you know, two and a bit parking spaces for the street triple. I would say the steering radius on this bike is not great. I did find myself bumping up against the steering lock in parking lots, and so something to look out for. We are here at the office. We can listen to this engine one more time. Excellent. Like I said, nice little whistle, nice sound. Hopefully you got enough of it during the ride. Oh, what a terrific bike. Nice on a twisty road, good around town, good suspension, good brakes, fun engine. No, it doesn't give up a lot, you know? Okie doke, jumping into Instagram questions. Always Two Wheels asks, does it still have the dipstick to check oil level? Yeah, I saved this actually. I meant to talk about that in the ride, or mention it in the beginning. Yeah, there you go, a little dipstick. I'm not sure if people think that's bad, or I don't know. I'm not sure why you asked that question, but there you have it. Yes. Simul Grams says, hey Zach, I've owned the new RS for almost a year, and I must say the RS TFT Dash is rubbish. Dead giveaway. You're from Britain, I suppose, using the word rubbish. Would much rather prefer the R's analog dials. Okay. I saved this because obviously not a question, but good feedback from a watcher, a viewer of the show, that they have the TFT Dash and they think that it sucks. I actually think it's great. I like the Triumph TFT Dash system. I think it's cool. I like the controls better. The UX is better. But, you know, to each their own. And I appreciate that Semel Grams here is pitching in their opinion. So thanks for that. Dane Sigler asks, how do the ergonomics compare to an MT-09, and would you pony up the extra cash for the street triple? Good question. With an MT-09, you sit what feels like much farther forward, closer to the handlebar. The foot pegs are lower and you have a lot more legroom, and it almost has this sort of like pseudo supermoto kind of feel to it. You sit so far forward. This bike is much more typical naked sport bike where you have relatively high foot pegs and the seats push back a little bit, slightly more aggressive rider triangle. So yeah, the MT-09 is quite a bit different, feels quite a bit different to sit on than this bike. And if you're shopping between the two, I'd recommend swinging a leg over one at a dealership as close to each other as possible, because I think that will really help. Between the MT-09 as it sits in 2020 form and this bike, I'd probably pony up the cash for this, because this is a better sport bike and I have sporting roots, even though I love the engine in the Yamaha. I do appreciate the quality pieces on this bike, the good braking hardware, much better fueling, stuff like that. So there you have it. JDM Jude asks, how relative is this bike in one of the largest segments in the market? It seems this year we heard about half a dozen new bikes in this segment from manufacturers. To name a few, you got KTM 798-90 Duke, you got 690 Duke for that matter, BMW F900R, Kawasaki Z900, Yamaha MT-09. What else am I forgetting? I'm probably forgetting stuff. But the point is, there's a lot of activity in this category. Lots of interesting, fun bikes getting slung into the market. And where I think this bike loses out is that it's a little bit out of date. I think it could be a little bit streetier. I think it could have a little bit more legroom and be sort of designed as it's its own model now. It's not just a stripped down Daytona anymore. It's its own thing, and it could stand to have a redesign that speaks to that, in my opinion. But then again, they're holding down this corner of the market, and it's still the standard bearer, like I said, in a lot of ways. So if you want something more streety, more comfortable, there's lots of other stuff to choose from. And because this bike sort of has been there longer than anyone, yeah, still very relevant. Ride Fast Die Old asks, would you compare this more to the MT-07 or MT-09, power and performance-wise? Easy question right here. MT-09, absolutely. Not just the triple, power and performance-wise. It is very much more an MT-09 than an MT-07. So if you're cross-shopping, that's the one to look for, in my opinion. Snoots asks, is the Street Triple R too raw for a sporty daily rider? Would an MT-07 CB650R or Trident be a better choice? How about the new Aprilia RS660? Yeah. I don't think it's too raw. No, I do think an MT-07 is a little softer, probably a little bit better commuter. I think this is way better than the CB650R, in my opinion. And the Trident I have not ridden, but I think I'm going to want more punch. You know, I think a Trident performance-wise is going to be more like a Ninja 650 or SV650, something like that is my interpretation of it. So no, I don't think this bike's too raw. I think you just need to make sure the legroom's okay for you. And as long as that's okay, then I think you'll find it's quite nice on a daily ride. Simon Hudak asks, why are the front headlights so ugly? I don't have an answer there, obviously, but I did leave this question here because I think it's funny. I think the headlights are arguably a little bit ugly, but there's no question what bike's coming at you coming down the road, right? They're distinctive, and I think that's something. It's worth something. So sorry, Simon, I don't know why they're so ugly, but I do know when a Street Triple's coming at me, and I appreciate that. Last question from Sassy Quatch Graham. What's the bike's standout weak point? I ask because it's famous for being all-around amazing. I like this question. The turning radius, I guess. I find that a little bit annoying. I wish it was a little bit better in a parking lot, but like aside from that, not much. The quick shifter's not perfect. The seat's great. Ergos are good. It's a little bit buzzy, but it's really not bad. Passenger accommodations, I don't know. This is all I got. I don't think there really is a standout weak point. I think it's one of the reasons this bike has been so successful over the years. So unless you need a really wicked turning radius or tons of legroom, I can't say this bike has a huge weak point. So I hope that helps, Sasquatch Grams. Thanks everybody, as always, for the Instagram questions. Bear with me now. We're going to put this sucker on the Daily Rider leaderboard. Okie dokie, everybody. Here we are inside RevZilla West with the new Daily Rider leaderboard. It's gone through some iterations here, as you can see. It's vertical now, no more graph. We just got the bikes on the left side in order. Best to worst, obviously. Right side of the board, not exactly sure what that's going to be yet, but bear with us. I'm sure we'll come up with something pretty cool. For now, it's just the hopper. So you can see here we got Triumph Street Triple. And the last little bit of flair here is the leaderboard, as you can see. Kawasaki versus 650, Tenere, so on and so forth. We got little logos here that were 3D printed by a fan of the show, friend of the show, I should say. So shout out to Danny for that. Thanks, Danny. You can probably see over my shoulder there, you can see Spurgeon from the CTXP episode where we delivered pizza. He's on 24/7 watch, and he's watching me work right now. Not awkward at all. So on to the new Daily Rider leaderboard has to go the Street Triple R. In the top 3, we got Versus 650, Tenere 700, Honda Africa Twin. Those are the adventure bikes. Other naked bikes, we got Ducati Street Fighter V4S. That's in 4th place here. Then a couple spots down, Yamaha MT-03. And below that, a couple of Triumphs, actually. Triumph Daytona 765 Moto 2 and the Rocket 3. Right next to each other, oddly, even though they're very different motorcycles. One being a power cruiser, the other being a sport bike. So I think the Street Triple is going to be above these bikes here, the Daytona and the Rocket. It's going to be the best Triumph so far. The question is it better than these bikes here? It's not as good as an Africa Twin, spoiler alert. More exciting than a CBR 500 and MT-03, and kind of like better, right? More electronic options. Plus, you know, it's better, right? Let's be honest, shall we? So, Street Fighter V4S versus Triumph Street Triple R. Yeah, it's better. It's better than a Ducati Street Fighter V4S on the daily ride. I think lighter, easier to push around, a little bit less complicated, not quite as hot on a warm day. So there you have it. Not quite in the top 3, but in the top 5 for the Triumph Street Triple R on the daily ride. That's it. New office, which is a construction zone for now, and I'll show you that later. We'll do a little tour at some point. But new board, same old Spurgeon, same old Zack. And as usual, I hope you had fun on this daily ride. I hope you learned a thing or two, and I very much hope that I'll see you next time on Daily Rider. Was the ambulance? I'm gonna get out of the way. I'm gonna get out of the way for the ambulance. That's the ambulance with the Christmas tree in it, I think. I hope the Christmas tree is okay.